Welcome to our 94th podcast. Today we're talking about something that consistently drives interest, questions, and frankly, frustration in organizations: goal setting and motivation. What's the one thing leaders, managers, and individuals can do differently in 2026 to turn goal setting from an annual exercise into a driver of execution, engagement, and performance? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant, and joined on location in the West Coast today is Ben Kleinman. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, Rich. Hey, everyone. Reporting live from LA.
Right on. And it's like basically the same temperature there right now as it is here in the 40s. It's crazy.
Well, it's a little early still, so the sun's just kind of coming up. But
Sure.
overnight now it's in the 40s.
Right
It'll
on.
get up into the 60s. So not too bad.
Okay. All right. Well, Ben, it's the new year, 2026. We're 7 days to recording this. We're 7 days into it. And what's the thing that everybody talks about in the beginning of the year?
Everybody sets goals.
Right.
Everybody's like, I'm going to the gym. I'm putting down my donuts, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Now, what's the first thing that they end up doing? Breaking those
Not going to the
resolutions.
gym and picking up the donuts.
That's right. Exactly. And so many times that happens in the workplace too, right? So we were doing some end of year analytics and taking a look at what's driving traffic on our site and what's driving some of the search results related to what we talk about, right?
Yeah.
And one of those was goal setting and motivation, right? As a keyword phrase. And we thought, this could be something that we could dig into, not just now, but I mean, there's a whole mass of studies out there, right, from various different sources, right, on the subject. But yeah, what's your experience been with goal setting, like in your CCMP now?
Oh, please, Pashon. Well, I do want to say that we've talked a little bit about motivation in prior episodes, specifically episode 73. We talked a lot about motivation. And so that's a good one to reference as well.
Nice.
And it's definitely an evergreen topic. And one of the things that I've seen either, personally in my career or with other people that I've worked with is that goals are just all over the place in terms of how people's goals are assigned, how involved they are in the process, how they're measured qualitatively, quantitatively, all of that. So I've seen just like, imagine chucking the bowl of spaghetti at the wall and, everything and anything. And so it'd be great to dig in to see what a lot of the more recent research suggests, or the more consistent research. You've always referenced Locke and Latham. So I imagine you're going to want to dig into that and sort of share why that's so prominent still, but also talking about what we've learned since then and figure out maybe some better practices that people can implement as far as goals and goal setting, and tie that into motivation as well.
Sure. And it's not that I'm like a stickler for Locke and Latham. It just happens to be that they wrote goal setting theory, and it does. They come up a lot, right? They're referenced a lot in the literature, whether it's a lit review or even there's been some more recent meta-analyses where they pull in different sources, right? So, but it's interesting, like motivation itself, right? Like people don't just, well, I guess sometimes they do go to work like zombies, and but even zombies have motivation, right? I mean, they have, they have.
Brains,
That's right. That's right.
brains.
But we need to. I mean, we need to keep people motivated, and
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah,
For sure.
and aligning goals to, a person's interest, but also the organization's
Right.
objectives, right, is super important.
And that's where it gets super interesting because everybody is going to react differently or respond differently to goals and having goals set for them or with them and
Right.
what types of things they're trying to achieve personally in their career, how that plays into what the organization's trying to do with that role overall. And it's just this fascinating matrix jigsaw puzzle. It's just really cool. And so, yeah, let's dig in.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen since the turn of the year, right, has been people focused on saying, like, literally, there's a health expert that I follow, Funk Roberts. Love you, Funk, by the way. Use this program, used it this morning. But in his recent podcast, it says goal setting is dead, which I was like, what? Like, it hit me hard. I'm like, oh my God, no, we're not saying this. And then I'm looking at some of the other people that I follow, and I'm actually seeing the same thing. There was this person that I know, Brian Ward, who has this other program called Third Way Man, and he was saying those are dead too. And he said, and then Adam Grant, if you're familiar with him, anybody, he is a published author. He's at the
Wharton.
Wharton, right? And he's also has a podcast. And
Yeah.
on
And he does a
LinkedIn,
lot of work on organizations, organizational culture, organizational strategy, things like that,
exactly.
personal and organizational.
Yeah, yeah. And he even said that goal setting, goal setting for results is dead, or something to that, or outdated, or something to that effect. And I'm like, what are these guys talking? And it's
Can you explain that? Because I'm with you right there. I'm wondering what does that mean really? Because I
right.
can't imagine a world where we don't have goals.
Well, that was my initial pushback on Adam Grant's post was, how do you sell that to an organization that has, they are driven by results, right? The results are profitability and revenue, right? So, how much money we make, or how much money we keep, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, even
but
just personally, I can't imagine not having a goal of running a marathon in a certain time or, you know, something as simple as that.
well, there's the difference right there. When what they were
Okay.
talking about is relating it to sports, right? The idea is not the results goals per se, which, look, in all honesty, that you are great to set those, right? But what's more important is the behavioral goals that you make, the changes in the way that somebody behaves. And in other words, I'm going to do this for this amount of time, or I'm going to, basically you're building up habits, right? So creating goals around practices that that will result in results, right? That have outcomes, right? But it's making goals for the systems that you use and the full adoption of those systems.
And
So, yeah,
and you're saying that's what's still alive. That's not dead.
that's not that. That's
So
so
what's the dead
so
part?
so so there's so much, like, clickbait in this, right? Like, right?
Well,
The
it is, it's a little
Yeah,
I'm still struggling because it's a little bit clickbaity and it's a little bit sort of like
It
we're not
is.
calling it goals anymore, but it's still really goals,
It's still
right?
really
It's like we're
goals.
not calling it DEI, but it's still DEI.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so what is the dead part of goals are dead
It's
or goal setting is
it's
dead?
I think the idea here, Ben, is that it's less about um how many points you get if you're in a basketball season, how many points you get in that season, right? It's more about what are the practices you're going to do to achieve optimal performance, right? So it's less about the I'm going to do X amount of whatever it is, right? Widgets created or money saved or whatever that is, right? Less about that and more about I'm going to apply this system, this a process, right? So it's all about process, which I think our Six Sigma people would be very happy to hear, right? But it is more about that than it is about setting a quantitative goal around a specific metric. Because I mean, honestly, some of that's going to fluctuate, but depend on the market and all that stuff, right? If that makes sense. Um, but your the habits and the behaviors that you exhibit individually or as a group, those are the goals that they're talking about that are alive and well, which will beget the
The goals that we want to have, that
right, the results.
the outcomes, the results that we want to have, that we're just not going to call goals anymore.
Right. Right. So
I
for
think
all of
that's
our
a bunker.
listeners, like forgive my clickbait there.
I think that is absolutely bonkers hooey, but
Yeah. Okay.
I'm an N of one. I will take it on faith.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
look, for what it's worth, right? I mean, I think you're right that there have to be some more concrete, like we do analysis by what an achievement is, right? So why
Yeah.
would
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
at the end of the day, in 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 this country we call it soccer, in the rest of the world they call it football, but in most of the top professional leagues, if you're a manager and you're not winning trophies at some point, you're going to get fired.
You're gonna get
And
fired.
so you can call it goals are dead, you can call it we're just building the process and all that, we're just training our players, we're instilling happiness on the field, whatever you want to call it, but if you're not
Mhm.
winning trophies, you're going to get fired.
Sure.
It's as simple as that. In a corporate setting, if you're producing widgets and those widgets have really poor quality, you're not going to stay in business. And
Sure.
so whatever you're doing, you're still going to have goals around producing widgets at a certain cost with a certain quality that meets your customers' needs. And so, I mean, I don't see that changing
Sure.
anytime soon anyways. I mean, regardless of what's happening with the nomenclature we use or the technology we use, I think there's just some underlying fundamental principles, and I could be way off base. I know
I
I'm an
don't
old fuddy-duddy, but
I
I don't
don't
know.
think you are, Ben. Honestly, I think a lot of it
What,
again is
off base or an old fuddy-duddy?
oh, you're both of those, but and so am I.
You and my daughter agree.
I got 3 kids that would agree with that one for me, man. But, no, I think you're right, but I think there is some merit to the idea of some kind of a set of behavioral goals to go along with
Absolutely,
those
100%
things.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love what you're talking about in terms of looking at it from a holistic perspective and looking at it as a systemic type of view. So you're not looking at something in isolation and you're not just saying, we're going to win that trophy, or I'm going to get my next degree, or we're going to produce 1 billion widgets this year. But
Mhm.
you're looking at it in an entirety. How are we going to get our company set up so that we can have happy workers producing high quality widgets at the right price for our customers, that are there when our customers need them, and looking at the entire ecosystem.
Yep.
That I love. And if you can build in ways to do that, that's where we come in with a lot of the cultural stuff and the
Yep.
organizational design and the organizational happiness factor and all of that. Those are things that I absolutely 100% agree with.
Sure. Sure. Well, Ben, we're about time for a break here. So
We're probably way overdue for a
way
break.
over, right? Yeah. So let's cut right now. And then when
Yeah.
we come back, we'll pick this up. So
Cool.
we'll be right back.
Meet Hermie the HR Hermit Crab. Laugh, learn, and lead better with Hermie. Hermie is here to tackle workplace madness with heart and humor from Harmonious Workplaces. He's perfect for HR pros, leaders, and change makers. Hermie teaches workplace lessons through cartoons and is great for team discussions and workshops. Get your copy on Amazon now. www.hermiehrhermitcrab.com. Again, that's hermiehrhermitcrab.com.
And we're back. So Ben, we're talking about goal setting, motivation, these, these keyword phrases that have been both driving traffic to our site and driving people making content and probably driving a bunch of people crazy, right?
Right. Well, certainly driving me crazy.
Right.
And we just spent the last 10 minutes or so debunking Adam Grant and Funk Roberts and others. So if you missed that, if you're joining late, definitely go back and look at that.
Right.
I say that in jest, but Rich, you had a lovely agenda stubbed out for topics you wanted to talk about today. So maybe we step back into that flow and sort of look at some of the things.
Yeah, I mean, and from your part of the notes here for the show, in one of the bullets you said, goals help to set expectations. They help people to achieve, to build trust, and to hold everybody accountable, right?
Yeah.
And I think that very much aligns with some of the foundations of goal setting theory, which are it's setting challenging but attainable goals, right? So the goal needs to be challenging. It can't just be a gimme, right? But they need to be smart, and we've talked about smart before. But specific, for those who don't know, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant. Some say realistic, and then time constrained, right? So it has to be within some box of time, right?
I was just going to ask, since we've mentioned it a few times, goal setting theory, all of that, is there a theory that would encapsulate everything around goal setting that you could articulate, or is it not quite that simple?
Well, no, I mean, from setting the goals, right? If I'm getting that right, like you need to have clear goals, right? They need to be clear. We have to understand if there's ambiguity, then we just, how do you hit a target that is fuzzy or whatever, right? So you need to have clear goals. They need to be challenging. So in other words, we need to outperform what we've done previously. We need
And
to
that's
have,
because otherwise, if it's a simple goal, it's too easy for me to hit.
it's too easy, right? And so our motivation
doesn't
to
motivate.
achieve that is, it's like, I could do that, but why? Right.
Right.
What's the, so there should be some valence, right? So there should be some degree of importance given to that, right? Some significant value to why we're doing this. And we have to subsequently be committed to attaining that. That's partially where having accountability, this is where I think shared goal setting comes into play, because when you can work with your manager or a leader or even a mentor, right, to share the goal setting, but you're the one you're empowering the person to create the goal for themselves based on themselves, right? It could be Very
that
powerful.
co-creation is so important. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I've
Yeah.
personally seen evolve. So years and years and years ago, there wasn't as much I didn't see as much co-creation, at least in the situations I was in.
Right.
And I feel like more recently, that has become more of the norm, where it's not just a manager or a departmental or functional lead saying, these are the goals, this is everybody's goals, go and achieve. There's a lot more of that co-participation so
Mhm.
that a manager and a managee will figure out how to get some goals that are correct for that person, the managee, the employee, but also that meet the organization's needs as well.
Sure. Sure.
That keeps the buy-in from both sides. So absolutely critical there. And
Yeah.
so then the whole point of all this, having clear goals, having challenging enough goals that are achievable, but not just completely like, I'm never going to dunk. I'm a short guy. I'm never going to dunk in the NBA. Right. But, you know,
That's
could I
just
dunk
Spud
with
Webb.
that?
Spud Webb could dunk, couldn't he? He was
He
like
could, but
5'6".
he's got a couple of inches on me.
Oh,
So,
does he?
you know, even with some mad hops, I could never do it. But could I dunk with a step ladder? Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be super fun. Challenge.
Right on.
So clear goals, challenging, but getting into the smart thing that they're achievable,
Right.
having that co-creation, creating commitment, and having that feedback loop so that you can stay on track. And um, it's not just a once and set once and then review once. There's some kind of regular cadence where we're checking in and reviewing and all that. So all
Right.
that makes sense. Thank you
Mhm.
for reviewing that. And the whole point is that we're trying to motivate a person
Right.
to do something to achieve some outcome or result. And that's what we were talking before, that it's best looked at in a holistic, systemic way, as opposed to in isolation. Like
Right.
we're not just going to produce a widget. We're going to do that because of some other thing. And that gets
Yes.
into the personal why, the organizational why, all of that, the
Right.
customer's why. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you
And
for sort of rowing back a little bit and helping me understand the framework here.
you
Super.
literally did all the work, man. Like right now. And 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 it's like, this is not none of this is really new, right? I can recall that there's
Right.
Earl Nightingale, had a recording back in, I think it was the 50s or the 60s, called The Strangest Secret, and it was talking about why men in their 20s, so specifically it was talking about men, but, why men in their 20s have high motivation and that nothing can stop them. They're driven, right? As opposed to men later on in life who are um drifted, right? They've drifted away. They've and actually Napoleon Hill even wrote about this in a different book, right? But a lot of this has to do with, they have to have clear, worthwhile, and achievable goals, right? So it has to be within their competence, but it has to be challenging, right? But it needs to. I think there's one of the things, from a motivation standpoint, it has to mean something,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. And when we talked about motivation before prior episodes, we looked at there being different kinds of motivation. And so there's intrinsic motivation where internally I'm motivated to do something. I'm motivated to train really hard so that I can run faster because
Right.
that's meaningful to me personally.
Sure.
And then there's extrinsic motivation where I am trained to run faster because if I don't, I'm going to get eaten by a cheetah, that kind of thing. And so it's those two
Yeah.
ways, and they can work against each other and they can work with each other. And so we unpacked that a bit in the prior episode 73, I think it was. So
Yeah.
I won't repeat myself then, but you can look on our website, you can look in the blogs for all that kind of good stuff. But it's just gotta come down to why we're doing something. In the same way that we've talked about all the organizational culture and organizational behavior and design, you're doing it for a reason. And that
Mhm.
could be as simple as we want to make something beautiful for our customers,
Sure.
or it could be any other million number of reasons, but there has to be some why that's driving that.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, Ben, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, go ahead.
Before we break, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, just to put a bow on it.
Yeah,
The
please.
whole goal setting theory that we just
Yeah.
elucidated, founded on work by Edwin Locke and Gary Latham.
Yep.
Is that the foundation for smart goal setting, or is the smart goal setting kind of just part and parcel of all that? Or is it just all one big goal setting soup?
That's a good question, Ben. I don't, and I should know this because I should have done my homework on this before, but I don't know where the acronym SMART comes from because it's not, I don't think it's from them. But it's the elements of that again, where it is, there's some degree of measurement.
Mhm.
It has to be specific. There has to be, now, I mean, one of the things that I don't think is in their, their calculations there is the time constraint, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But there needs to be it needs to be relevant to the objective. And then it has to be, you have to have some degree of self-efficacy, right? Some degree of self-confidence that you can attain it,
Sure,
right? So
sure.
it's attainable.
Okay. So maybe it's a building on the foundation that Locke and
Yeah.
Latham laid.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Sorry
say,
to
'cause
derail.
no, that's their theories started in the 70s and have been advancing through. In fact, there's a whole book that they wrote that talks about the history of motivation from the industrial age to the present, right? So, and the present, it was early 2000s, I think, is when the last iteration of that book was. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
Well,
All right. So let's
yeah.
break, and then
When we break, when we come back, though, maybe we talk a little bit about why goal setting fails in the real world, kind of in context with what we were just talking about.
love it.
Cool.
Sounds great.
We'll be right back.
In a world where leadership needs clarity and action, and HR gets left out of the loop, one hermit crab steps in to save the day, only to be shut down by management. From the creators of Hermie the HR Hermit Crab and the Harmonious Workplaces podcast comes a new shell-shocking adventure, Out of the Loop into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. This book blends workplace satire with evidence-based lessons, reminding leaders that culture, trust, and people strategy don't exist as extras. They form the foundation of lasting success. Whether you work as an HR professional, a leader, or just someone who has survived a few too many staff meetings, Hermie's stories will make you laugh, think, and maybe even change the way you see your workplace. Purchase Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, Out of the Loop, Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry, now available on Amazon and Ingram Spark. Shop now at harmoniousworkplaces.com/HermieHRCrab. That's harmoniousworkplaces.com/HermieHRCrab.
Huh. Big change of Fred.
And we're back. Okay, Ben, we're in the home stretch for this podcast episode, talking about, we're going to start singing the Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Harry Carey. I can't do a Harry Carey impression. I'm not going to even try. But
We'll put a link in the show notes.
there you go. Yeah, if you don't know. But why does goal setting fail in the world? And we do see this so much, right? And so some of what we've talked about is in the last segment, right, was why goal setting does motivate and all of that.
Right.
So, in your experience, what have you seen from a breakdown standpoint?
Well, I was harping on it before, but I think one of the things I've seen is just this breakdown between goals being assigned as opposed to being co-created. So I've
Yeah.
been in situations where I've been given goals and I haven't been given the resources or authority to meet those goals. And so it's no surprise when I don't meet those goals, and yet I still get punished for that. So
Right.
I see that as a very disjoint kind of thing. But when you have some co-creation in there, when you can say, okay, you want me to do X, can I have enough time to do that? Can I have enough
Mhm.
resources to do that? Can I, have enough authority to make these types of decisions or what have you?
Right.
Those things tend to work out a little bit better. And those approaches just tend to be a little bit more harmonized and keep people motivated too. It's often demotivating to just be told
Yep.
what to do.
Yep. I
Oh,
remember early 90s or sorry, late 90s, early 2000s, we were just told this is what you have to do. You have to achieve this target by the end of Q3 and whatever it takes to get it done. Right. It's like, then you have to go and try to explain that to everybody on staff. And they're like, well, how do we do that?
right. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So being too abstract, right? Without like, how do we get this done? So there's the behavioral part, right? So having some of those goals to change behaviors, right? Develop
Mhm.
good habits, right? So
Mhm.
starting
Mhm.
small, building things up, having people practice,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Well, it's the same. I mean, what you're saying there is the same as we've talked about in classic organizational culture and organizational behavior and in change management. You want to have some kind of early wins, small wins, big recognitions up front, whatever you want to
right.
call it, that you say, okay, this is evidence, proof that whatever we're changing is working. And so the same thing sounds like it's very relevant for goals, goal setting, and seeing that you're doing these little micro tests up front and seeing, oh yeah, if I just change this, if I put the donut down for 5 days in a row, I start to feel a little bit better.
Sure.
Okay, that's great. So
Right.
you start to see that, and that builds that flywheel effect. So it's
Absolutely.
cool that I'm just sort of realizing now that there's all kinds of synergies across how organizations and individuals can play out this motivation and goal setting and things like that.
Yeah. And I'm actually glad you brought in the flywheel, um, visualization there because that Jim Collins, whose book is way outdated right now. Because a lot of the organizations he talked about from good to great are no longer in
Not
business.
so great.
Right. Yeah. But he does talk about um building on small wins to get the
Mhm.
flywheel of progress going and spinning faster to where it
Oh yeah.
is, it
Same
has
with Stephen
momentum.
Covey, 7
Oh yeah,
habits
right.
of highly effective people. Right at the end, they
Yeah.
talk about the flywheel effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
makes a lot of sense.
Right, right,
Um
right.
And the more we have those wins, and we practice what we're doing,
Yep.
right? That's the
Practice.
other thing.
And I've seen a lot of more recent learnings and trainings and, it is part of an organizational change where they're sort of doing those more small, more incremental types of trainings and not just, "We're gonna sit you in a room for 4 hours, train you, and send you on your way," and assume
Right.
that you've intaken everything. People realize that doesn't quite work as well as it is meant to, and so they've broken things down in sort of small wins,
Yeah.
small bite-sized pieces of training, things like that. So it all starts to make sense.
Yeah.
And
And
that then ties into what you were saying with the, repeated interactions, um, measuring and what we were talking a little about before about measuring how you're achieving your progress towards your goal, not just once a year, but
right.
are we having these check-ins more regularly? Are you seeing progress? Can you take pride in that? Or,
Sure.
can you see earlier on, oh, we're going a little bit off course. Can we adjust so that we don't get to some huge variance at the end of the year? We
Mm.
can sort of try to adjust that
Yep.
earlier on.
Perfect. The other thing that you mentioned just a little bit ago was access to resources or access to access, right? Like permission sets and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's another huge disconnect is, well, how can I achieve this if I don't have the keys to
Oh, yeah.
this or that, right? And
For sure. If your goal is to go get groceries, but the grocery store is 40 miles away and you don't have a car and you don't have a bike and your
that's
need is to get that done by the end of the day, that's going to be a pretty tall order.
sure, absolutely. And then how
I
many
mean, we're
times does it
talking
happen?
before DoorDash and, Uber
Right.
delivery.
Well, right. Now where there's a will, there's a way. You'll find you.
Well, yes, but 40
Yes,
years ago,
delegate it, right?
yes.
But there's a cost. There's a significant cost to that delegation. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
But how many times are we given a goal that we are, tasked to do, but then we find out we don't have access to the capital to procure resources or
Right.
the permission to, have some influential effect on,
Right.
somebody else in the organization. So,
Right. Or you find that your goal is in conflict with other people's goals,
right.
whether intentionally in conflict or not. You have a goal that's been, let's just say, happy path. You have a goal that's been co-created with you, but some other person in the organization has a goal that's not quite aligned with yours.
Mm-hmm.
Those things will eventually come into conflict, and that can cause problems with both of your goals.
Right.
But that also leads to some disharmony,
Right. Absolutely.
which comes back to why it's helpful to look at things in a systemic, holistic way.
Well, and speaking of systems, right? So there's another one of these things that commonly breaks down is, you are adding things onto broken systems, things that aren't working, and then you're trying to get people to work more on top of this thing that's not working. Right.
Right.
So,
Right. That's called the whip the horses faster approach to management.
yes, exactly. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
That was one of my favorite. It still is one of my favorite expressions.
Yeah.
Love that.
I have a T-shirt somewhere with that.
Yeah.
And then
I think if I ever got to be a manager in a corporate setting, that would probably be one of the first things I put up on my
that'd
wall.
be the poster you put.
Like very, very nicely printed, framed, all that.
Magnificent. Yes.
With like a paddle or a riding crop or like a cricket bat or a baseball bat right under it.
That's beautiful, Ben. The thoughts
This
and
is why I am an independent consultant.
There you go. The thoughts and opinions of Ben Kleinman are his alone and do not reflect Harmonious Workplaces podcast.
But for those who know me, it's totally in jest. I mean,
Yeah, yes, I'm
know.
a kid. Yeah. Cool.
That's the kind of thing.
And then one of the other things before we close, because we're coming up on time here, Ben, is that we're still so used to measuring once a year, just doing these once a year check-ins and performance evaluations and stuff instead of regular coaching and the things that we've talked about before from like Kirkpatrick's model of training evaluation where performance, true behavioral performance comes from on-the-job training, coaching, co-creation, and performing the work and continuous improvement, right? So if you don't have that feedback that we talked about earlier consistently,
yeah, no, you have to have it. And if we were talking before about producing widgets, and you were talking about Six Sigma and how the whole goal of Six Sigma is to control your production of widgets so that they're produced within a certain quality band that you find acceptable and that meets your targets of price and quantity and time and all that.
Yeah.
Why would you, I mean, it's crass to think about, but you would want to do the same thing with people too, in the same way that no, people are not widgets, but you can't expect to just tell them something once and let that go forever. You need to monitor that, and you don't control it in the same way, but you want to be there to support people in meeting their goals and understanding why it's going well or why it's not going well and what needs to be adjusted. And maybe there's a hiccup 1 month for whatever reason, or maybe things are going great for 1 month for another reason, but you want to be there supporting people. And so it's conceptually similar, applied very differently.
Right. Right. And so when it comes to looking at goal setting and motivation and all that, right, it is really hard to see why this is failing within an organization when you're inside. Our former guest, Dan Pinkham, who we still keep in touch with. Hey, Dan, how are you? He likes to say that you can't read the label from inside the jar. So, sometimes you need to have somebody come in and evaluate, and take a look at, here's what's really going on.
External pair of eyes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And just that external perspective brings some unbiased or fresh eyes to it can really help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
something we do.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going
It
to
is.
say, that's something we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're very motivated to do it too.
That's right. Absolutely. It's what drives us. So, well, Ben, that's we're just about out of time here. What final thoughts and wisdom do you have?
Where
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare presume wisdom, but one of the things that I think we talked about at the top is, some things that folks can do to make this not be as broken as we've seen it in the past. And,
Right.
we just spent the last 40 odd minutes talking about that, but essentially looking at it as a systemic and ongoing type of procedure, type of
Right.
interaction, and looking at it as something where you'd want to co-create a goal or a set of goals with the people that you work with, and doing that in concert with where the organization is and where the organization is going, and then having some sort of ongoing mechanism to monitor and adjust and,
Yep.
and do that. I think those are some of the key takeaways that I would pull from our conversation today.
Yeah. And every one of those, Ben, I think is worth exploring deeper into a couple of different episodes.
Yeah, for
here.
sure. I mean, we've only just scratched the surface
For
of
sure.
all of this. So, I could easily see expanding on this quite a bit.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, thanks a million for joining us on our 94th episode already.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Cool. Well, good for you, man.
Fantastic. I love it.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Thank you for listening, for enjoying us talk about why goal setting is not dead, why goals are still alive. And will
cheers.
continue to be.
All right, Ben, take us out.
Until next time, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.